The new education policy 2019 had given me a very tough time, a very hard time to me, because they gave me only 2 months to complete this book. I wanted this book to be out before this policy is endorsed in the parliament. So within 2 months, we have to completely read the book, the policy, and respond to it. And I couldn't also accept some offers in my career also because of this. So about 3 to 4 months, I stayed back home and started working on it. Only after completing this book, I went to Mysore and joined as, I have taken this position as Vice Chancellor. But one thing I have to say, there are a lot of interpretations and expositions given to all of us out of the book, and in general what the national education policy had to say to us. So every one of us know what the policy is about. But the problem here is, at the outset, I would like to say that the policymakers didn't seem to understand what education, the philosophy of education as it is. Because there is a part in the book, I said, if I remember correctly the book, the sentence I wrote, knowingly or unknowingly, the policymakers had dragged liberal education into its recommendation. So I said knowingly or unknowingly, and I answered this question in the last part of the liberal education chapter. Because liberal education is not an easy task to be contained in some quantifiable or in a narrowed fashion. It is a very big, wider, it has its wider perspectives. Liberal education is something which trains mind to think. So when one is involved in getting the training, in training the mind, they will be able to know what the truth is. But to know the truth, they have to go wider beyond the domains they study. Say if they study physics, chemistry, whatsoever, the disciplinary educational approach. Beyond this approach, they have to go wider and study all aspects of the knowledge, the domain that they study. So that means the curriculum should have the flexibility. The curriculum should have an open-ended approach where the contents, the subject matters of instruction should be properly laid out, should have an open-ended approach so that the learner can go wider and study the society and study all relevant peripheral issues, and they can come out with the understanding on the subject that they study. So this is the philosophy of liberal education. So when they go into study the liberal education, they have to critically think, they have to critically review, they have to critically question all the challenges, the questions, the challenges, the problems, the doubts being facing the society or facing the learner. So that means the curriculum should be flexible enough, wider enough. That is why liberal education had come in the offering. But even now, those who had brought the concept of liberal education in the Western world are struggling now because it also has its own negative consequences. But one thing I have to say at the outset, this policy has to be outrightly rejected. It has to be, it qualifies an outright rejection, because the justification is made in the book. This book, as our prince said, is not mainly responding the policy, but it comes out with the definition of the the process of education, the philosophy of education, it defines with respect to the kind of the society we have. Education is society driven. Education is a social function. That is why I said that society driven education must be there, not the nationalistic education. The reason is nation is good if the notion of all people are reflected in nation building. In the way in which a nation grows, evolves, it must be able to reflect all aspects, all aspirations of the people, the aspirations of all people, all segments of the society. The likes, the dislikes, the wants, the requirements, and the problems, the challenges, all should be reflected in nation building. Only then the nation is going to serve back to the society. Otherwise, that nation will be serving only those who had defined the nation. That means a nation is a notion of the people. If the notion is unsegregated, if the notion is aggregated, if the notion is an aggregative process of all notions of all segments of the society, then it will fulfill the aim of the nation. Otherwise, that nation is not going to do anything to the members of the nation. So that means it is very hard to believe or understand the concept of nation, because the nation always, when we accept, it will always be built on nationalism. What is nationalism then? Nationalism is nothing but a state of mind. A state of mind that this is my nation, this is my identity, this is my language, this is my culture, and this is my value. This is collectively what is represented as nation. Nationalism, what makes the nation. So that means this nationalism must be able to represent all walks of life. Otherwise, it is not a nation. Now, our Professor Anil, in his speech, said that the nationalism is working against a nation. That is true. Because this nationalism that what we have, like Hindutva, whatsoever they are calling now, is working against the nation itself. It is making its own grave. So that means the nationalism should be cautiously received and understood by the members of the society. Otherwise, we are going to lose. We cannot. It is not, reversible if we lose now. Whoever said nation had used nationalism to maintain the status quo of the society, of those in the helm of the affairs of the society, those at the helm of the affairs of the nation. Those at the helm of the affairs of the society are those at the upper levels of the social strata, the upper communities. Those at the helm of the affairs of the nation are the rulers of the nation. So that means there is a collusion between the rulers and those having the social authority. So these people are colluding with each other and trying to, voice their interest. So that is what nationalism is about. Always nationalism will be driven by or defined by the specially cultivated group, by the specially cultivated community in any nation. Because we have caste system, a hierarchically degraded caste system we have, social structure we have. It may not have in other parts of the world. In the United States, it's something different. Or in Western other countries, the social structure is something different. It is economically driven. Sometimes it is, racially driven. Sometimes it is socially driven. Ours is socially driven. The upper caste, lower caste, middle caste, and so on. So that means this nationalism, whoever wanted to get the status quo both in the society or at the nation building, will always use nationalism. That has been the history. That is what this book says. What Hitler did, what Mussolini did, is what our current government is trying to do. Mussolini said Italianito, Romanito. That means Italian pride. And Hitler said German pride, racial purity. That is what Nazism is about. So when he said German pride and Mussolini said Italian pride, I think the new education policy in its vision statement says Indian pride. Could you notice the similarities between all three? The Indian pride is, as Professor said, the Hindutva or our knowledge, Indian knowledge system, our Indian heroes like Aryabhatta, these, that, and so on, and our precious culture, our value system. These are all the nation pride the policy talks about. So that means they want to inculcate this national pride into everyone's mind. That's why they want to have early childhood education at the age of 3. Of course, everyone knows from 3 years to 8 years, everyone knows that the brain grows very fast. That means the child is able to absorb things very quickly. It can learn. That is why they want to inculcate this Indian pride, the so-called their version of Indian pride, into these children. They want to have early education starting at 3 years old. And this nationalism is always a problem to majority of the people of the country. So most of the countries around in the past 300 years, if you look at the evolution of the educational process, they always try to use nationalism, the national agenda first. So when you put the national agenda, when the national agenda is defined by the specially cultivated class of the society, which is a micro minority everywhere, then how can we expect that that is going to serve all other communities, the majority communities? So this has been the problem of nationalism. So nationalism once started for patriotism, one started for collectivism, a collective representation of all people. Now it has been misused in the interest of the very micro minority, specially cultivated groups or caste or communities. So that is the danger we are facing. So now I have to justify, because this has been a confusion always, as Professor Vasanthi Devi said, between the dichotomous relationship or differences between nationalistic education and society-driven education. I always tell you, many people in many conferences, a nation is a notion. A nation can emerge, can disappear, can merge, can split, can be divided in due course of time. As Soviet Russia just collapsed about 3 decades ago, and Czechoslovakia. And many countries come together, merge or divide based on the notion of the people. If the people's notion is a united India, yes, it will be united India. If the people's notion is not united India, then it will be different countries then. So this is a warning to the nation builders, the nationalists. If they try to inculcate the micro minority interest into everyone's head, then they will face this question. The nation will be heading towards disintegration. That means education has been the tool to divide or merge or unite or disintegrate a nation. So that means education is a highly sensitive issue. We have to know, the leaders have to know, the policymakers have to know how to handle this. It's a very, very highly sensitive issue. We cannot play around with nationalism actually. So as I said, nation is a transient thing. A nation, the concept of nation is a transient matter. It is not a permanent thing. That's why I said this 80 years ago, Soviet Russia, they wanted Soviet Russia, a united Soviet Russia. After 60 years, the same people thought that it must be a disintegrated Russia. It was no longer a Soviet Russia. So it is the notion of the people. It is the likes of the people. It is the dislikes of the people. So the nation will always reflect the likes, dislikes, and aspirations of the people. So that is how nations are built. Nations collapse. So that means nationalism is always a temporary thing. It's not a permanent matter. But what is permanent is society. Society used to have 3,000 years or 5,000 since in time immemorial. It used to have a learning curve. Why we are talking about Tiruvallur after 2,000 years? Why we are talking about Tolkappiyar after 2,500 years? It's the learning curve of the society. Why we are talking about Buddha after 2,500 years? It is the learning curve. That is the society. It is a permanent thing. Society is a permanent thing. It is not transient. It will be upgrading itself. It will evolve. It will transform towards the better position or worst position. But society is permanent. That is why education has to be built upon the society, not upon nationalism or nation. This is a very important concept. Sometimes people will come to you and tell you, oh, come on, nation is ours. Nationalism is nation pride and patriotism, all those things. They will try to inculcate our interest, dragged towards them. But we should be very much careful what nationalism is about and what society is about. Society is our life. It is our identity. It is our language. It is our tradition. It is our value. At the cost of our value system, our language, our culture, our tradition, if nationalism interferes into our evolution, we must resist, otherwise we will lose everything. Everything. We will lose our identity, we lose our economy, we will lose our culture, everything. Why I'm saying always I'm not jingoistic. Being a Tamilian, I'm not a jingoistic Tamilian. I'm a rationalistic Tamilian, not a jingoistic Tamilian. I always use Tamil culture or our Tamil tradition only rationally. There are also some bitter elements there in our culture also, because our people are also following the so-called caste-ridden things. But doesn't mean that I'm opposing it. There are better parts of my culture that I can heed to, I can take proud of. But it is not jingoism, because the culture, the tradition, the value, everything will give us life, livelihood, and opportunities. I mean, economic opportunities. That is why I'm saying society-driven education is not only going to enlighten us through a quality education, not only going to, give us the ability, the skills and knowledge necessary to face the changing worlds. Not only is going to help us in changing or facing the highly technologically driven world. Our fourth industrial revolution is coming towards us. So we have to be better prepared. But how? But my culture will give me food. If the culture, my value and my language and my traditions are incorporated, that is what I collectively say indigenous knowledge system. The indigenous knowledge system must be able to improve itself. It must be protected. But the indigenous knowledge system should also be able to incorporate the global knowledge system, so that the global knowledge, if it is relevant and if it is good for me, it should be domesticated within the indigenous knowledge system, so that my knowledge system will be upgraded. That is the best knowledge system. That is the stable knowledge system. Education should be able to stabilize my indigenous knowledge system, not destroying my indigenous knowledge system. That is what society-driven education is about. It must stabilize. Say, for instance, about 20, 30 years ago, I was able to eat parayasoru. Parayasoru. About 20, 30 years ago, when I was a kid studying in school. But now I am not able to eat it. But now, those days people said, okay, you eat chapati and puri, parota, all those things. Very modern food, those days, 30 years ago. And whoever ate parayasoru were discouraged. I think most of us would have, followed it. I think practice sensed it. But now I'm not able to get parayasoru. But somebody is making my parayasoru in United States and making and selling the food, making money out of it. Is it not my culture? Is it not my human experience? Knowledge is nothing but human experience. Whatever the things that we do in laboratories or in four walls inside the school is not only knowledge, because these are practicing the knowledge. What is being done in universities and schools are practicing the knowledge. The knowledge is outside. Human experience is the knowledge. So that means education should be able to collectively, cultivate, collectively consume the human experience. Then the knowledge becomes full. Then it is relevant to my society, to relevant to the learner. So this is how education should imbibe or cultivate or receive the ideas, the human experience, the knowledge from the society. So educational process should be like an osmosis between, on one hand, the society, on the other hand, the formal education system. So it must have, forth and back transaction of the knowledge, sharing mechanisms between education and the society, the educational process and the society. Only then my education will be relevant to me. Only then the knowledge that I gain from the formal education will be relevant to me. This is what society-driven education is about. The subject matters of instruction that are taught in the classroom are highly irrelevant. You ask any doctors or any engineers or any graduates, what did you do? What did you learn after 4 years or 3 years in that studies? You ask them, they would say, no, I didn't learn anything, but after I gone to work, I got some idea what is my profession or my skills and things about. This is everyone's, even my experience also same. That means whatever being taught there in the classroom, in the name of formal education in both schools and universities, are not reflecting the society's demand, the society's requirement, the society's aspirations. I said parayasoru. Parayasoru is my experience. Parayasoru is enzymatic food. Americans are telling now, if you eat parayasoru, you are healthy. You don't get diabetes. Because it has enzyme in it. Biological, it is going to stimulate the biological, your intestinal biological process will be optimized. So it is a good nutritious food now. It is a new invention. But my grandpa and grandma, they have practiced this 1,000 years ago. The kuru, kanji, all those things are being sold outside world. Outside, go to China, you will get kanji. Go to Japan, you will get rice wine. Rice wine is nothing but niraharam. It's a fermented rice, isn't it? It's a fermented rice. You keep it over 6 hours, it is fermented. So that means enzymatic process is there. Some enzymes are developed chemically, biochemical activity. And then finally it becomes rice wine. Why my grandma and grandpa were not able to make rice wine? They knew there was a rice wine. It was their human experience. They know the art of making it. They know the padam, how to make it. My wife is not able to make it now because she lost the knowledge. The knowledge was not transferred from generation to generation. And somebody else is making a wine out of it. Somebody is selling $10 in a small cup, Parayasoru in United States, saying it is the healthiest food, making money out of it. That is why I am equating society-driven education into economic opportunities. Only when we reflect the social experience, the human experience, and only when education is able to consume the human knowledge, the human experience, the human demands, then the education will be synthesizing those things and lead or enable the students to question what it is. What is there in Parayasoru? I would have asked myself, had I got an education, a critical pedagogy kind of educational approach, I would have asked, what is there in my Parayasoru? I would have invented rice wine 30 years ago. But my education didn't allow me to do that. They told me Parayasoru is nonsense. So I lost my opportunity to become a millionaire, my people to become millionaire, and get all my experience, my human experience would have been converted into economic opportunities. So there is a linkage between society-driven education and economic opportunities. Society-driven education can give us livelihood, can give us economic opportunities. So it can also give us job. So this is what we are talking now. So that is why my answer to the first part is, as opposed to society-driven education, nationalistic education is a nonsense, and it has to be ridden away from the country once for all. Because this nationalistic education is the sensitizing, indoctrination of the ideologies of the value system of the micro-minority communities. It is an indoctrination. So that should be once for all rejected. After 30 years or 20 years, I don't want somebody to go out and come back, say, I want to have the age old, back to the basic and get my value system regained. It cannot happen because education is irreversible. Once you step into it, you have to suffer after some time. So that is why nationalistic education is highly, highly dangerous. It will always reflect the specially cultivated group of this micro-minority group of the larger society. So we have to reject it. This is one part. So with this philosophical dichotomous analysis between nationalistic education and society-driven education, I went across throughout the book, addressing each and every aspect of the recommendations of the national education policy, and then proposed alternate solution in a different context, in a society-driven educational context. What are all the solutions? So this is what collectively we call it is. So professor was saying the complex, the school complex system. Professor Anil was saying the dangerous, the plot involved in the school complex systems. The school complex system is has been devised to promote private education only. Because, who said so? The WTO GATS organization, where the government of India in the year 2005 entered into, made its offer to accept the conditions of the WTO and GATS. The GATS consider education as a trade and as a commodity. So that means as a trade and commodity, the government of India should open up the gate, everyone should come inside and establish their business. So this is the aim of the GATS. So with this aim, everyone is invited, and people are now coming and taking the services from India and outside India. So there has been a turbulence happening now. So what will happen after a couple of years is that most of the educational services in India will be outsourced to outside in the digital world, and the outside world will serve us in the name of education. So this is what is going to happen, and the GATS advised, it is a mandate in the guards that the government cannot fix fees. That's why the new education policy says the fees should be the matter of fees should be let to the private educators to fix on their own. So what does it mean then? So they want to have a school complex system, diluting the existing schools, the government or public schools in the villages. The government that means the government has decided not to go ahead with new schools. Instead of revamping the schools, existing small schools, it says that the small schools are not capable to run fully, so they want to merge it with some bigger schools. That is the school complex system. So this means they are going to combine all small schools with big schools instead of promoting or upgrading the small schools into bigger schools. So this indicates that the government is not prepared to start new schools. Then who will start new schools? Already 40% of the students studying in schools are private schools. And about 78% of the students studying in higher education are in private higher education institutions. So soon, in another 10 or 20 years, it is going to be highly privatized. So that means we are facing a very, very big, tough problem. In the name of liberalization, liberal education, they are trying to bring all subject matters of instruction as per the aspirations of the nation state and the specially cultivated class of the society, and they are trying to inculcate those set of mindsets. It is the state of habituating the mindset. That is what nationalism is about. And they try to inculcate that mindset into us, and so that we will be formed into that shape over a period of time. Then they will get one nation, one identity, one language, or whatever the one value that they want to impose on it. So that is why they want a liberal education system. Liberal education means there is a flexibility. You can send anybody into the educational institutions to teach. They have national tutors, they have national heroes. They are all going, these heroes are what? Maybe they may have, the all suffering people might come to schools and colleges and they are going to teach. This is what the new education policy says. So under the current system, they cannot do so. The reason is education is education. It has its own process and protocols we have to follow. Whereas these people are trying to bring the use in the name of flexibility, because liberal education gives flexibility. Using this flexibility, they want to sneak into the education process and inculcate whatever the interest that they have into the curriculum, into the subject matters of instruction. So this is what all about. Vocational education, our brother said. Vocational education is heading towards a descent-based vocational education. Descent-based vocations. Kula Kalvi. That is what vocational education is about. So all those, the recommendations, the policies, and all, operative suggestions given by the policy is everything could be framed as a nationalism. That's it. Nationalism is the only thing that drives them to train or educate our minds in one direction as they aspire. So this is what happening. So there are on reservation and on the examinations, competitive examinations like NEET. One thing I would like to say about the competitive examination, there are many countries conduct competitive examinations, like United States, Europe, everybody. They do the competitive examinations, entrance examinations, only for the purpose of, it is like a scholastic test, because they have different versions, different sort of schoolings. It is not, there is no proper a centralized curriculum there, because it is not regulated. In United States, who is regulating education? Only district is regulating education. In US, not the state even. The state doesn't have a policy. In United Nations, in United States, there is no policy at all. There is no regulatory mechanism. This district level people are giving the input. They are together with the educationists devising the system, the curriculum, the subject matters of instruction, and the textbooks, everything. It is highly localized. That means they can reflect to the local worlds and think globally. That is what happening in Finland as well. So because of a variety of systems that they have, they wanted to have a one test called the Scholastic Aptitude Test. The Scholastic, the SAT examination, I want to tell you, the Indians, the Asians are scoring high. The white Americans are next. The least scoring people in the SAT examinations are the black people and the Hispanic people there, and the Native Americans, according to the reports. You know what the SAT said? SAT is not a government. It is like a trust, a private agency. SAT is a private agency. So SAT, few years ago, came with an idea called adversity score. What do you mean by adversity score? If anyone fails to get marks, low marks in competitive examination, it is not because of lack of his knowledge, but because of the socio-economic conditions he faced. So because of the adversity he faces, the adversaries he faces, he or she faces, like criminal, some people, black people in the United States, they live in some criminal areas. That is the adversary to them. If in India I belong to a low caste, then that is the adversary I face. Being a low caste, I have a less privilege and less access to knowledge and my skill development. This is the adversary I face. So likewise, there are people who always face adversaries all over the world. So SAT is not a government. It doesn't have to go and provide the adversity adjustments in the marks. What they did? They came up with a mechanism called adversity score, and they used to profile the marks obtained by the people, by the students, the actual marks. And using this, adversity mechanism, they re-evaluated the marks, actual marks obtained in the entrance examinations, and re-ranked it. By that re-rank, the black students who scored 900 had become 1,300 or 1,500 marks. So that means that profiling of the marks, grading of the marks using the adversity score has been done not by the government but by a private agency who conducts this examination there. This is the society-driven approach. So these are all the mechanisms that we have to imbibe, we have to adopt if we are going for a competitive examination. But in India, competitive examination is not at all a possibility, considering the society system that we have and the adversaries we have and the diversity we have. Killing the diversity, if we homogenize the system and the curriculum and the subject matters of instruction, it is going to be highly, highly dangerous, and innovation will be always facing downturn. India's rank in the innovation index is 57th rank. Singapore in the innovation index is 7th rank. Switzerland and all those small countries are in the top 10 ranks. United States in the top 10 ranks, the bigger country. China is in the 14th place. India is in the 57th place in innovation. So there is the government commissioned body in UK and United States have come up with reports saying that unless you make diversity, you will not innovate. The root cause of innovation they have identified just only 2 years ago. The root cause of innovation is nothing but make diversity, make education diverse. And in every research project in United Kingdom, they want one black person, one Asian person, one British white person in the research team. A physical diversity must also be there. The knowledge diversity must be there. Only then innovation can be attained. So this is why most of the world's progressive worlds in recent times have shifted. Even Harvard, last year they created a own pedagogy, a diversity, a kind of a pedagogy. Considering all Hispanic, black people, everybody, they named it as the Harvard pedagogy. Why? What is the need? No one told Harvard. Because Harvard is a private university. It is driven on its own statutes and constitution. It doesn't have to even answer the government of United States. But on its own it came out. On its own it came out, and it wanted to have its own diverse applications in the educational process, in pedagogy, in research, everywhere. And the white people went to the court, the Supreme Court in the United States. Those who objected Harvard University went to the court. The court declined. Harvard University is right, because it is a science. It is not just only out of empathy and sympathy they wanted to practice diversity. Harvard wanted to practice diversity in its education process because it is giving them an edge to achieve innovation, to promote knowledge, to produce knowledge. The knowledge productivity will be high. The skill levels attained out of these diverse educational applications will be very high. So that is why Harvard is practicing. As if Oxford, Harvard, everybody is now looking for an opportunity to revamp, to restructure everything as if they started only yesterday. Oxford is about 1,000 years old university. Now it is redefining as if it has started as a new private university just recently. But our so-called educationists in India, a lot of private universities are mushrooming now, and they are practicing and reflecting what exactly the nationalism and nation state is trying to achieve. It's a highly dangerous approach. Private education should be discouraged, because in Indian system it is highly irrelevant approach. In Finland, in most of the countries in Europe, 90% of the students studying above 15 years old are in public institutions, public schools, government universities. The same people, the European and Western countries, are telling us to privatize. But in their own country, more than 90% of the people are studying in government institutions. So you see how we are misled. I would say that those being taught are oppressed. Those being taught are oppressed. And those who perpetrate nationalism as a state of mind, or the state of mind of the super speciality class of the society, are oppressors. That means the nation state is an oppressor. And the state that supports this cause is oppressive regime. In that way, most of the 100% of the students studying in India are all oppressed students. So education has to liberate it. Education has to, bring them out and let them think and reflect on the ideas, on the opinions, on the concepts that they confront in the classroom, outside the classroom, so that they become educated people. That is the way we can increase the educative capacity of the society. There must be a bridge between the school education, formal education, and the societal educative capacity. The educative capacity of the society will be improved when the society is democratic. Unfortunately, the society in India is undemocratic, because we are divided by caste and creed and all nonsense. So this is not democratic. John Dewey says that once the society is democratic, there will be an increased sharing of knowledge, ideas, experience, problems, and there will be a cohesion, social cohesion. So improved exchange of ideas and practices will improve knowledge. That is what educative capacity of the society. So the educative capacity of the society will not happen, will not improve here because of the social structure we have, a socially degraded hierarchical system we have. That will prevent us to learn from each other, to exchange from each other, and to share our ideas, to share our plight. All will be discouraged. So eventually, the process of the natural social function as education that is happening for thousands and thousands of years in the society will be completely avoided. So in that way, the educative capacity of the society will be lowered. So in the absence of the democratic society, education should take its role. That is what I am trying to say. Our job is not to go and just communalize or just to socialize everybody as one caste or one community. That is a big thing. But at least education should be able to interfere. And it must have a proper intervention in the way in which society is functioning. That is what I call social pedagogy. That our brother Prince said, social pedagogy. Social pedagogy is nothing but facilitating the exchange, the dialogical process between the units of the society. Once it is increased, then the society will be able to educate itself. That education is what the civility, culture, the value, morality, ethics, and so on. Not only that, as I told you before, it is also going to improve the experience of the society. The human experience will be improved. Eventually, the livelihood, economic opportunities, everything will be increased. So that is the way I would like to bring notice to the people of my fellow citizens that there is a danger before us. So every recommendations made by the policy is detrimental to the society in India, to people of India. I even tell the upper caste people or some specially cultured, I don't want to use the word upper caste because there is a neoliberal social order is there now. It is also behaving like an upper caste. It has its own agenda. I call it as the neoliberal economic system. Neoliberal politico-economic system. And that system is a parallel social system now emerging. You go and talk to them, all these things, they will throw us away. All are materialism at the cost of the society's benefit and prosperity. So that means this neoliberal social order, on one hand, the natural social order, the divided caste system that we have, these are the two enemies that education should counter, should face. Only then education will do its intended job. Education is paralyzed. Education should be now, liberated from the clutches of the oppressions. Education must be liberated from the oppression. It is oppressed now. Not only us. The process of education is oppressed now. It has to be liberated. So who has to do that? It is not purely the formal educational platform using which we can do it. But the social pedagogy, as our Professor Anil said, and our brother Mr. Prince said, we have to go, hand on hand, shoulder to shoulder. On one hand, the formal education system, using the society-driven education philosophy, and on the other hand, the social pedagogy. We have to create. We will come out with more information later on what social pedagogy is about. And that must be practiced there as a movement in this society, so that both will be enabling us to get a good education, a meaningful education, a relevant education that we deserve for. I think that we have lost the education for the past 3,000 years, 2,000 years. And we again continue to lose in coming days ahead if we don't come together and tell this world and tell this nation state and the perpetrators of nationalism who wants to impose this kind of their version of the value system, then we will lose everything. So the book talks about everything: reservation and vocational education and a ranking system. Professor said, all rubbish, nonsense. The book justified, articulated the ranking system and accreditation system should be once for all removed from the vocabulary in Indian education. Because the ranking system is perpetrated by neoliberal order. It comes globally, and it has to be removed, because all universities, institutions will be working towards their criteria that is going to really reform ourselves into their shoes, into their aspirations. That is the reason that the ranking system, we don't need to be ranked. We don't want. Why? We are a society-driven education. If education is society-driven, we are going to satisfy the society's needs. We don't need somebody else to come and stamp that you are ranked number 1, number 2, number 3. We don't want that. So the ranks, everything, every aspects of the educational processes have been rightfully addressed in the book with respect to society-driven education. It is not opposing anyone, even to those, the perpetrators of this country, who wants to inculcate their version of nationalism. To them also, we tell you that this society-driven education will also liberate their children, not only ours. So we are not against anybody. We are for all. This education is the only inclusive education that the government of India or this nation deserves for. We are not going to oppress anyone in return, to return our history, to repeat the history. But we are working for the interest of everyone, and our first aim is to liberate ourselves through a meaningful, relevant, society-driven education. So I think that we have initially had an opportunity to share few ideas, but I took long time. Sorry for taking some time. And the Tamil Nadu Progressive Writers and Artists Association, please don't look at it with respect to their own doctrines and dogmas. They have also. But beyond that, they have taken this in the interest of this nation and society. So that means it is not their job, it is not my job, it is not our brother's job, but everyone, rightfully as said by our brother Mr. Prince, that we will be considered as drohi if we don't do that. Please, let us propagate this mission, let us join hands together and work for the cause. And I would like to thank everybody, and Professor Anil had to listen me for half an hour or more than that. I'm sorry, Professor, for making you to listening me. You are my guru and you are our mentor, and I'm sorry I have taken in your presence. Thank you, Professor, and thanks everybody for the opportunity.